Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Um, I'm looking forward to this Saturday, of course, where we're hosting Central Bank Governor Patrick Njoroge. I was sort of reaching out and wondering how I was going to go and meet him. And then one day I was just walking around the Serena and I found him there, and I said, serendipity. And indeed it was. So from that meeting, we arranged this Mind Speak, and we're looking forward to that, kindly being supported with a live feed via Safaricom, and KCB are supporting us as well. So we're looking forward to that enormously. I did an interview last week with the governor. We initially said, how long are we going to take? I said, look, 10, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, I said. And we were speaking for an hour, and I thought, I'm really infringing on his time, and I had to cut it short. But I think we covered a lot of issues. There's been a lot of subsequent comments that he has made, but just have a listen to that, because I think you get an idea of the challenges and how he's done so far. He spoke of the role of the auditor in his new normal. He spoke of the internet being like wildfire, and then I've got little clips on which wrap up. So if you're just interested in the auditor issue or the internet, that's another very interesting point that we were discussing. That point being, in the old days, of course, if you wanted a bank run would be created by, queues of customers standing at the bank demanding their money. And today, because of the interface between mobile money in particular and the banking system, which is actually a net gain, but what it does mean is the velocity, the speed with which money can go in and out is of a magnitude never seen before. We're going to be at the Intercontinental, and we serve breakfast from around 9:30. We start at 10, we end at 12 in the morning. Macro thoughts: China weakens the yuan, fixing to the lowest since 2011 as dollar climbs. The challenges there are not going away. I like this quote: there are zillions of ideas out there. They stream by like neurons. Joyce Carol Oates, The Paris Review. John McPhee, The Paris Review. And this, I thought, was very powerful. The mere passage of time makes us all exiles. I think that captures how I feel at the moment. Where's my youth gone? Never appreciated my body when I was a 20-year-old, and now I feel creaky. And it's just gone by so fast. Suddenly one day you're 21 and starting out in life, and the next thing you're somewhere else completely. I'm halfway through Roberto Bolaño's 2666, and I put a lot of quotes in there, but I hadn't read the book at that point. I just sort of courtship through, reading clips, but halfway through, really powerful. And then I found this review in The Guardian, Roberto Bolaño's 2666, Latin America's literary outlaw. And this critic is saying it's a novel of stupefying ambition with a mock documentary element at its core. It is divided into 5 loosely connected sections, each of which could stand as a novel in their own right. We begin in familiar territory with a tale of 4 literary critics from different European countries who are united both by their promiscuity amongst this group and their obsession of 3 men and 1 woman. With a cult German novelist called Benno van Archimboldi. Little is known about Archimboldi other than he's very tall, very old, and he disappeared in early adulthood. The next 2 sections then jump, so you're in Europe for all of that, and then suddenly you jump to Santa Teresa. The critics disappear. Instead, the focus switches to 2 other outsiders: a depressive Spanish literature professor who moved to the town after his wife's death, and a black American journalist who is there for a few days to cover a boxing bout. Gradually, the tone darkens and an atmosphere of menace takes over. And I'm in this bit at the moment. It is menacing, and I think that's why I've slowed down reading it, because it's so menacing. Snatches of conversation are overheard in bars and restaurants, references to the killings. It emerges that Santa Teresa is the scene of one of the most horrific crime sprees imaginable. The killings in question, the murders of young women, have been occurring there for several years. The novel is set in the mid to late 90s. Bolaño isn't just relying on his imagination. Here, Santa Teresa is a fictionalized version of a real Mexican border town, Juarez, which became notorious during this period for the extraordinary number of women murdered. That's a well-known story. For several years, on an almost weekly basis, the bodies of young women, some as young as 11 or 12, would turn up in the deserts surrounding the town. So I'm at that point. Threaded through the sequence are accounts of the various attempts to solve the killings by policemen, private detectives, journalists, and in one case a psychic. As the bodies mount up and all the investigations come to nothing, it becomes clear that we're being presented with a vision of hell, a place where horror is unending and meaningless. It is hard to think of a grislier sequence in literature. Yet the most startling thing about it is that it is literature, for it is easy to forget, as Bolaño lays down his litany of carnage, that none of what he's describing actually happened. Of course, something nearly identical to it did in Juarez, but Bolaño's town is Santa Teresa, and the women whose deaths he evokes so chillingly never actually existed. Critics have talked for years about the blurring of fiction and reality, but it seems to me that Bolaño in this sequence is doing something genuinely novel. He is deploying a technique of non-fiction, the forensic report, to describe something imaginary, but which nonetheless mirrors almost exactly an actual sequence of events. So it is a brilliant book, and I am in sort of thick of that very menacing bit that was described here. In his last interview, Bolaño declared in all apparent seriousness that he would most likely like to have been a homicide detective, yes. I bought my little one, Hannah, who's not so little, she's 10, some rather funky sneakers in Doha at the Nike store. I placed them in the back seat so that when her mother collected her in the afternoon from school, she would see the sneakers. And I said to her mother, call me when she sees them. And such is happiness, isn't it? Listening to your daughter's reaction, and she's so polite and grateful, a bit like my grandmother or somebody like that. She's always been like that, actually, and without any training whatsoever. Extremely gracious with people, receiving people, particularly older people. And I would I would like to pick her up, put her on a pink cloud, and push her around and never stop, or maybe visit a park in London like we used to with the older girls. Maybe by the river, and put her on a swing and keep swinging her for hours as she leans back and maybe laughs. I wish my mother was with us. I have a photograph of her in the pool at 2,000 meters above sea level at Borana, where we had a lovely time. The two of us do actually enjoy tremendously going out in the bush. We have such a lot of fun together. Donald Trump this week took his use of sordid accusations against Democratic Hillary Clinton to levels unprecedented in modern US presidential campaigns. In his latest example of the Republicans' unorthodox playbook, the presumptive Republican nominee is working to gain a stronger footing and offset a big advantage Clinton is likely to have ahead of the November 8th presidential election, a huge campaign war chest that she and her allies intend to use, and has launched a barrage of attacks on her, using the same strategy he used repeatedly during the Republican nomination fight against rivals like Ted Cruz. Look, he's ahead in the polls now, and I think cannot be misunderestimated, as President Bush once famously said about somebody else. Afghan Taliban appoints new leader and confirms death of Mullah Mansour. Let me put up the photograph of the wreckage of a destroyed vehicle in which Mullah Muhammad Akhtar Mansour was allegedly traveling when he was hit by a US drone. You know, in those old fairy tales when God or somebody with huge powers could just zap anyone. In many respects, the power that President Obama has, just to zap anyone he cares to. But obviously, not a nice person. But then, lots of people are not that nice. Brexit, so this was a big, it seems that the vote to stay in is gaining more ground. Sterling surged through 146, last trading at 146.06 in point of fact. Big move yesterday on the back of this widening gap. Let's go to the currency markets. Euro, dollar 111.51, dollar index 95.52, Japanese yen 109.92, Swiss franc 0.9919, the pound right now 146.04, the Aussie 0.7201, India rupee 67.505, South African 111.8210, Real 357.09, Egyptian pound 8.8803, South African rand 15.62. Dollar index, let me put up a 3-month chart. You know, that 93 level remains key. As long as we stay above that, I'm constructive the dollar. But we're getting, you know, I think it's particularly against emerging market currencies, if Fed pulls the trigger twice, which is what they're now talking about. And I think there's a gap here, right? The financial market conditions are a bit more stable, a bit more in equilibrium. You can make your move, and who knows what's going to happen later. The euro dropped to its lowest level in 8 weeks. And let me put up a chart that Holger posted on Twitter. And it gives you a good idea. You can see that, you know, the euro is soft as we speak. Gold, well, that had a very poor session yesterday. It must have been a lot of stop losses. We're at 12.25 now, and obviously finding it tricky thinking about the rate hikes. Gold is attractive, obviously, in a zero rate or negative rate environment, but a stronger dollar tends to not be supportive. Russia sold $1.75 billion of euro bonds, marking its return to the international debt markets, even as US and European Union sanctions remain. Have a look at the spread over treasuries, which has come in after a very big sell-off. But, you know, 1.75 billion is not a lot of bonds at a yield of 4.75%. Interestingly, what this report says, the main buyers of the euro bonds were investors from Great Britain, which is interesting. Charlie Robertson, who's a friend, and he was interviewed, the outlook for frontier markets in Africa, good interview, and it made an interesting comment about President Buhari in it, and I think, you know, it's a very fair point. Remains retrieved from the Egypt Air wreckage suggest of lost on board. That's the Egyptian forensics official. I'm sure that's the case. And I was just saying to Nisha, you know, who on earth is going to want to fly on them at the moment? The human remains so far retrieved from the wreckage of the crashed Egypt airplane suggests there was an explosion on board. South African all-share up 4.65% so far this year. Up 4.75% so far this year. Dollar rand 15.6204, strengthening a bit. I think, you know, some of the noise has calmed down a little bit on the Gordon issue. We were quite in quite an extreme position at that point. But I don't think, you know, there's anything to get bullish about. Egyptian EGX30 is up 7.01% so far this year. January 21st, 2015, a long time ago, I said, you know, I called Emefiele, he's the central bank governor of Nigeria, described him as having his finger in the dike, and saying this finger in the dike strategy is about to be overwhelmed by a tsunami, and it wasn't, in point of fact, because they just dried up the FX market and avoided it. But yes, let me put up a photograph of him. But yesterday, after the MPC met, and they didn't move rates, notwithstanding the surge in inflation and all the risks, but, you know, it's contracting now. Nigeria contracted in the first quarter. When I predicted that South Africa and Nigeria would contract this year, not many people believe me, but let's see what happens. And I think this is about a policy-making road crash. You know, the longer you avoid the inevitable, the deeper the recession becomes. Godwin Emefiele said Tuesday the Abuja-based bank would release details of a flexible exchange rate framework in coming days, probably introduce a dual rate system with the Naira trading at a market-related level while the central bank continues to make foreign currency available to some importers at a fixed rate, according to Rencap. 6-month Naira forwards jumped to 273 per dollar after the announcement, pricing at a devaluation of 36.5%. Well, you know what I think. They're now saying a recession, which we signaled in July 2015, now appears imminent. Emefiele told reporters in the capital. Buhari's Lagos no-show dismays Nigerian business. This is the president didn't even show up at a meeting he was meant to be holding with the business community. Nigerian oil shares down 4.93%. Returning to that Naira, obviously you can't fight the curve of history. Ghana Stock Exchange down 11.18% this year. Fitch cuts Mozambique rating to double C over hidden public debt, indicating a default of some kind is probable. The grade was cut by 1 notch from CC, material change in the creditworthiness of the issuer. The currency has fallen 14% against the dollar this year. The yields on Mozambique's $726 million of bonds due January 2023 rose 6 basis points to 16.295%, closed at a record high of 17.12% on May 19th. And again, we know all about that. Kenya's political risk low before 2017's election, says Exotics. Demonstrations demanding reforms to the country's electoral authority are the clearest mobilization of opposition elements since the 2013 election. Though there's been violence, pre-election political risk is relatively low by Kenyan standards because of factors including the unity of the governing coalition and divisions within the opposition coalition for reforms and democracy, they say. I'm just not sure about that assessment. I think it is in part right. I would agree with it. However, the IEBC, and something in their favor is that the IEBC, particularly its chairman, is now in an untenable position. If you're meant to be a referee and one side feels this strongly about you, then at some point you've got to bite the bullet. So I think, we have to expect some changes. Therefore, when one would expect them, that's a different matter. But they are on their way. I think that's a political reality. But the problem will, and that will puncture the protest momentum. But we've got to keep an eye on things because definitely CORD have gone to the street. They're doing Paul Virilio and being quite effective in it now. Poor dividend season keeps foreign firms' profits, repatriation low and the shilling strong. This is the season when big companies like Standard Chartered and others start paying back the full year dividend to their parent companies. So normally it's time of cyclical Kenya shilling weakness. The relatively light reaction, I'm saying, by the shilling to the dividend payment season speaks to the underlying strength of the shilling. So I think this dividend payout season will be a non-event for the shilling. Foreign reserves are at a record high, and the market perception of the central bankers' bona fides are sky high as well. And that's further supporting the shilling. I spoke about it before, the Teflon shilling. Standard Chartered Bank reported earnings per share up 42.375% in Q1. They've been probably the biggest beneficiary of the flight to quality. And when I went to that event with the CEO and head of Africa, and Lamine kindly invited me and put me on the same table as the head of Africa. It was very interesting. But in the speech by the CEO, he spoke about how Kenya was a bright spot, and you can see why. Sasini Tea and Coffee reported first half profit before tax surged to 667%. Earnings per share in the first half, 2 shillings and 25 cents, which is sort of on target. Last year they made full year 4 shillings and 23 cents. Kenya shilling, 100.798 last time I looked. Nairobi all share up 0.51% this year. Not much change when you think about it, but very skewed performance within that all share. NAC 20 down 3.59%. Kenya Airways has sent 6 people home on cash theft claims. This is in an audit being done by Deloitte. If you're interested in dialing into any of the shares, just go to the last link on Rich Wrap-Ups, and that links to every share that's listed at the stock exchange. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by.